What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 365 of Opinions May Vary. I am your host, JR. I have my co-host with me, Alex.
Hello.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm excited.
I was just going to say that. You probably even heard me say because we are very excited this week. Waiting patiently over the phone is someone that we have actually, I think we've told the same story about a dozen times over the course of the last 6.5, almost 7 years. But we have a very special guest on today, and I'm gonna get it. It's Jim Calafiore. Jim,
very
thank you.
Good.
Oh, I nailed it. Either that or he's just humoring me.
On the first try, he sticks the landing.
Stuck it, just like I always do. My face is only a little red. But Jim, thank you so much for coming on. This is very exciting times for us because we've been big fans of your work.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I first experienced Jim, if that's not the weirdest way to put it ever.
Man, where are you going with this?
Yeah, my first run-in was in 2012, I believe, if the autograph I have is correct, at Boston.
I always date him.
It's true, yep. Boston Comic-Con at the Hynes Convention Center. It was the first year they went to the Hynes, and I believe it was like, I was just wandering around and Alex was talking with someone and I was like, what's going on here? And then I started thumbing through the pages and I was like, oh God, give me all of this. But it was the main thing that caught my eye. You know, obviously there's the product that we're going to get into all that soon. But we've always told the story that you're just such a cool guy to talk to. Like you can have a really good conversation with Jim Calafiore at a convention, and like it can make your show.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's nice. I hide my general disdain for people very well.
If any regular listeners to the show, you've heard us say his name in the past.
We've been pronouncing it wrong the whole time.
Probably,
but
yeah.
There you go.
Anytime we do a convention recap, if Jim was there, we've mentioned his giant wall of prints. There's two of them.
Monolith.
Yep.
I have two of them above my door right now. I've brought friends to the table, and they've left with 4 at a time. Sometimes.
I know at least 3 or 4 people who have, like, they'll post like Snapchat stories, and in the background you'll see them on the wall, and I'm like, oh, nice.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
And I've also gotten a sketch. I think I ordered one ahead of time as a commission.
You have a sketch?
What was it?
What's the sketch?
It was Gorgon from the Inhumans.
Do I know?
Oh.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Because that's
the only time I've ever drawn Gorgon from the Inhumans.
It is.
I think I've got him coming right at us, stomping forward on the ground, right?
Oh yeah, he's doing a full charge. With good hoof feet, it's correct. It's perfect.
Some people don't do the hoofs.
It depends. It's weird. Yeah. Not every. Sometimes the size is weird. But I think that was one I put in for ahead of time, which wasn't the same as like getting the same day kind of like, hey, can you draw this and I'll come back in an hour.
Right.
Including I said, I don't know if I said it yet. We each have original art pages, and then I've got a whole bunch of stuff signed.
Yep.
Because we're just fans like that.
Oh.
So
my first published work was in 1988. So there's a lot out there.
Now I think that's a good place to start. I mean, 1988, you've been in the business a long time. I call it my boring question. So I'm going to get my boring question out of the way.
Okay.
If we could talk about kind of your background, you know, was this a childhood, I want to be an artist, I want to draw comic books, or was this, I'm kind of good at this, I should go to school? What's your background? How'd you get to where you are today?
With some difficulty. I always loved comics since I was a kid, and I've always drawn. And I actually didn't take any art classes till my last year in high school, in preparation for suddenly deciding, why don't I go to art school if I want to do this? But I'd always been drawing comics and wanting to draw comics. The Hulk was my favorite character when I was a kid. And I went to art school, not Cuban or anything like that. It was a school in Maryland that had the instructors had very little idea what the hell I was doing when I do something with panels. But, I learned basics of illustration, lots of different techniques, a lot of different tools. And I was always trying to get in. I came out of college with a graphic communication major, so I could actually earn a living of some sort, and I did advertising. I worked in ad agencies, which really, really sucked. And I actually got into comics in sort of a backwards way. There used to be a small free rag at the comic shops called Comic Shop News, I think.
I think that's
I can't
around.
remember. This is back in like 85, 86, 87.
I think that's still a thing.
Is it still a thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not
I've
every
never seen
shop.
it again.
Not every shop gets them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And in the back, there was an ad for a publisher saying they're looking for artists. So I just sent in some stuff, and that guy didn't last long.
Mm-hmm.
I barely had started doing some character designs for a series, and he collapsed. But he gave my name to Gary Reed at Caliber Press, which was a very good company back in the 80s, early 90s. The Crow was there. Jim O'Barr's The Crow. Guy Davis started there. Brian Bendis started there. Matt Lark started there. Phil Hester started there. A lot of really good people started there. And it was a time when there was a lot of there was a robust independent market because there were multiple distributors. It wasn't just Diamond.
Right.
So shops got different catalogs from different companies, and some of the companies specialized in independent books. And so the shops would know to look for the independent stuff. You know what I mean? Instead of having to get to the back of previews and find the people buried in the back.
Which is exhausting to flip through that book.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah. And, I mean, I never really looked through it much, but I know it's got to be, their money is spent by the time they get past the image section,
It's a
DC,
phone book.
Marvel, Image. How much money you got left after that? Or how much of your budget do you have left?
The thing weighs like 2 pounds per
It's
catalog.
enormous.
Probably. And that's back when there were a lot of independent publishers. That sort of fell by the wayside. It was people who were just giving royalties on sales. I made very little, but I was in. The dirty little secret being that I would have paid them to publish me. They could have just said, "Here, how much will you want to give us, and we'll publish your work." Do you want me to keep going chronologically?
Did you have like a break moment where like I did it, I'm officially in now, or was it like when you hit one of the big two?
Well, there was real excitement about the very first thing, wanting to do it for so long, the very first thing published. But in the industry, you get jaded super fast. But in terms of being solid, I ended up starting work at Valiant during their heyday, just after Jim Shooter had left. And that really established me where I could then just go to an editor at DC and say, "Hey, I'm looking for work." Or an editor at Marvel. And they knew who I was because Valiant had a presence at that time. So that was, I don't know if it was an aha moment, but that's where life became easier when I got into Valiant.
That's always a good moment.
Yes.
And like life is easier. It's like not just easy, but easier.
Easier. It's not.
Yeah, no, nothing's ever getting easy. The life of a freelancer, always hoping the next job is there.
Yeah. It's a lot of people have been pointing out, and because it's just been happening so much, of a trend of some people are sick of doing so much oversight with the big two, we'll call them, and then they want to do more independent things. They want to go do more creator-owned stuff, because then it's like it's theirs again. And it's weird. It's not weird, but like it's interesting seeing the shift of like I want to make it. I want to draw X-Men. I want to draw this. And then they go, it's time for my own thing.
It's definitely more rewarding. I mean, I started writing and drawing all my own stuff at Caliber Press. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. And then when I moved into Valiant, I did some plotting. I was supposed to do some writing just before I left. When I got into the Marvel and DC at that time, the writing, desires kind of got laughed off like a fart in a windstorm. But I did do some writing. And it's nice to be back doing my own stuff. It's just the fact that we have the luxury of being able to say, I want to do my own stuff because there's so many ways to get our stuff out now. Mm-hmm. That's not just praying we got to pay all our own money to publish it, you know?
Especially with all of the crowdfunding available now, you see a lot of books, whether they ship or not that's a whole nother story. But I mean, you've done your share of creator-owned book. I'm looking at one of them right now. Alex has been. I think you pitched it a couple years ago.
I may have, yeah.
Back when we used to do the pitch, we used to do a segment where we would pick a thing. Like one of us would pick something that we really dig and we wish more people would get into, or we think more people would really enjoy it. And I believe Alex pitched Leaving Megalopolis once.
Thank you.
If not, it was
choice.
Right. Yeah, that's what I said. If it wasn't pitched, it was at least like, look at this. We're notorious for shilling out other people's Kickstarters, and we don't even get paid for it. But I remember when the Kickstarter.
No matter how hard you try, you can't get people to pay.
Yeah. But it's just a matter of we want, and it's like kind of like the slogan for our show almost. We want to show you neat things, and hopefully us talking about these neat things will get you to go look at this neat thing. And I remember it was. Surviving Megalopolis, was that the Kickstarter, or was it Leaving?
No, Leaving was Volume 1 was Leaving Megalopolis. That was the Kickstarter, and then Volume 2 we did it as a mini series and eventual trade at Dark Horse. Surviving Megalopolis.
Yep. So you have experience in this, and then obviously working with the incredible Gail Simone. I actually found a review on Twitter of. I have to read it. It's too good. Of Leaving Megalopolis.
Okay.
In 2013, Chuck Wendig, the author, had tweeted, and you'll have to excuse my language here, sweet, gore-soaked fuck mittens, Gail Simone and Jim Calafiore's Leaving Megalopolis is batshit, woe-dang, scary, amazing, you want it. And I was like, okay, I mean, that's enough to get me to read it.
And I was worried about cursing on it. Fine. Fuck you, you fucking fucker. There we go. Now I got that out of my system. I never saw that tweet. That's cool.
It's pretty legit. I'm down with it.
You've talked about it a lot, like. And I've heard you like in conversations like, hey, have you read Leaving Megalopolis? Mm-hmm. I think you would dig this. It's like a lot of people when like, oh, I love Gail Simone, blah, blah, blah. Like, especially like when Red Lanterns was coming out and we were hyping up because when we saw that you were on the art for Red Lanterns, which is a book that needed kind of like an injection because Red Lanterns, for us at least, was a little stale. I was like, yo, Jim's on this art. We're on a first name basis now. And it kind of like, I was like, okay, cool.
Call me Skippy. What the hell?
Skippy's on the art now. And it got us pretty jazzed for it. And a lot of our friends were reading it and stuff. So we're like, I remember hearing Alex's pitch for Megalopolis a lot. And I don't know what else to say about it. Alex, let's talk about Megalopolis.
What I was curious about was, how did you get involved with Dark Horse? Like, did they approach you and go, hey, this looks successful, can we print it?
What had happened was Gail was working there.
Uh-huh.
She was doing...
Is that Red Sonja?
Yeah, was it a crossover?
Maybe.
Because Red Sonja was Dynamite, but there was a crossover.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of Red Sonjas.
Yep.
And so, but I think she knew the people up there to begin with, and I think she brought it up to them. We were looking for some place to do the second volume. Mm-hmm. It needed I wanted to do it as a series, first. Put it out. It's easier to get the work out that way. So, and I haven't seen anybody really do a series at Kickstarter. That'd be an odd thing to structure.
What's happened is you don't really see like a lot of successful ones. You see more unheard of names, and they'll get maybe 100 backers, but that's enough to get a printing. And they do
family members.
Yeah.
Whatever pays.
But I have seen people do like their comic book issue 1, and then another Kickstarter for issue 2, and then another Kickstarter for issue 3, and they just kind of put it out that way. Sometimes they do
that would
volumes.
have been a bit cumbersome.
Yeah.
To try and do.
Yeah.
Just with the numbers we got in terms of pledges for the first volume, that would have been cumbersome and really hard to work.
Yeah, definitely. With Megalopolis, how much, I'll say, communication or cooperation was there between you and Gail when it's like, so we're going to have a bunch of superheroes who are now incredibly evil and kind of vicious. And did you do the design work, or did she come up with characters, or how did all these different figures come together?
Well, the genesis of the project was that I had suggested to her after DC had canceled Secret Six, along with everything else for the New 52.
Yeah.
The no foresight motherfuckers canceling Secret Six. I said to her, some people had talked to me about Kickstarter, and I'd looked into it, and I said, did you want to do something? So she sent me 3, I think, just like couple sentence ideas for different concepts. And I picked Megalopolis. So I like that idea. And we did kick stuff back and forth. In terms of the characters in general, she would just say a name.
Okay.
Like Fleet, who is the speedster. And which is basically what she said, Fleet the speedster.
Yeah.
And I did a design for it immediately. I wanted to do something super creepy, where he's basically keeps running and not eating.
Mm-hmm.
So he's wasting away. He's emaciated. He looks almost zombie-like.
If like Flash was a corpse.
Say that again?
If the Flash was a corpse, practically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Almost. Or something like she had Cupid the archer, and I couldn't figure out what to do with Cupid until I came up with this sort of, I thought it was pretty creepy design for his costume with red heart on across his face. A lot of the designs for Megalopolis were sort of reverse engineered. I knew what I wanted them to look like, beat up.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted a helmet for Fleet with a crack, or actually my idea for Cupid, the flying archer, I wanted a heart burned into his face. And I had to figure out why he would have a heart burned into his face. So I made it that it was part of his costume. And the backstory that's sort of out there that we never used anywhere yet is that when the heroes went insane, a villain burned his heart into his face. One of the superheroes gone crazy, they had a fight, and he burned the heart into his face, scarring him that way. In general, there were things like that. In the backup story for the first volume that I did, Wonder Boy, that I wrote myself and plotted myself. I brought in a character. I created a character called Southern Belle, and Gail really liked her and made her the main villain for the second volume.
Yeah,
the main big bad. I don't know. I can't think of many cases where she had a specific design for anybody that she said to me. She'd give me little notes, but nothing like it needs to look like this. I would just have to design the character around the needs of the story generally. We had a character called Red Flame, and I knew he was going to have a hand burned into his chest, like it would become his chest symbol. So I gave him a very simple costume, so there wasn't a whole lot of bric-a-brac on his costume, so that the hand would stick out. Stuff like that.
I mean, if he had pouches, they just catch on fire or something.
Say that again?
If he had a bunch of pouches, they just catch on fire.
Yes.
So.
Well, not with unstable molecules. Come on.
What was I thinking?
Do you ever read comics, Alex?
That's what always drove me crazy about John Byrne's run on the Fantastic Four. He put wrinkles in their costumes. It's unstable molecules. They cling.
That's nonsense. Oh, it's the Fantastic Four.
That's a whole nother episode.
Am I opening old wounds for you here?
No, it's everyone has parents that don't really get it sometimes, or family members.
Mm-hmm.
And when the last movie came out, my mom was like, yeah, they're doing the morning shows and everyone's talking about the Thing being naked. And what's the deal with that? And I go, they could have just given him pants. I don't know. They could have just, this wouldn't be a problem if they just put pants on him.
Well, it's not like they showed a big rock dick hanging out.
They didn't. But like, there's still questions. And like, this could all be avoided if you, anyway.
There was so much more wrong with that movie that you could get into. Forget the nakedness.
Yeah. It's anyway about good stuff.
Yeah, let's talk about good stuff again.
One of the things I did want to bring up was some teasing you've been doing. You said we can't talk about it completely, but on your Instagram, you've had a few posts of your train red sketches, and they're just different headshots of horrifying monster people.
Yes.
Let's talk about it.
It's what I'm working on now, that I'm writing and drawing, that I am hopeful to take to Kickstarter in a couple months. I'm working on getting about 2/3 of it done before taking it to Kickstarter. So that's what's done complete. And I'll probably try and bridge a couple shows with it because I like to pump it at shows.
Mm-hmm.
It's a horror comedy with as much sarcasm as I can get into it, which is my sense of humor.
Nice.
Very dark. Its main character lives in New York City. He's a struggling actor who, as an atheist, finds out he's been all wrong.
Huh.
And hell exists, and heaven exists, and angels exist, and demons exist, and have a lot of fun with the demons. We have couch potato demons, we have stinky demons, we have leech demons. I just have a ball with it, creating all these different characters. We have bickering angels, and things kind of get hairy for him. We have zombie roommates. Fun stuff, I hope.
I've had a few of those.
Haven't we all?
When you came up with this idea for this context, is it a matter of this is the story I want to tell? And is there ever a moment of like, am I going to get flack for this idea? Are people going to complain? But while it's being a comedy and there's satire involved, you could just say, relax, it's a joke.
Well, the world has become intolerant, but I don't give a shit. I always take my comedy cues from Airplane. Mm-hmm. Basically offend everybody. I don't think a movie like that would get very far nowadays. But it's something I want to do. I'm a big fan of, if you've ever read any Christopher Moore novels. Does that ring a bell at all?
I worked at a bookstore for 10 years, so the name rings a bell, but I haven't read them myself.
I'd recommend a book called A Dirty Job. It's a lot of fun. Very dark humor, very sarcastic humor, and he deals with the supernatural.
I just Googled it. Yeah, I recall his books were very popular. I remember seeing those all the time. But now that I kind of know what they're about, I'm interested here. Anyways, continue.
Yeah. I'm just not worrying about anybody because this is what I want to do. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like I have a gag strip on my website, JimCalafiore.com. It's called Crooks and Nannies, and it's a single panel strip that's every Friday new. It's been going since 2011, and I actually just stopped after 7 years. It's designed to offend everybody, depending on which week you're reading the strip. So I'm not going to worry about people's sensibilities. It's jokes. People need to take it a little easy. It's meant as a joke.
I figure the people who are going to seek out your work are the people who are fans anyway, and might already know what it is that you put out and what you produce, and no one's going to come looking for a fight with this kind of thing. They're coming looking for enjoyment and entertainment.
Yeah, it's all in fun. At least the comedy stuff's all in fun.
As far as the production, you mentioned hopefully going to Kickstarter with it soon. Is this going to be your first kind of like independent, like just you putting out a project on Kickstarter?
Yes. Well, I had actually put out a compilation shortly after Megalopolis. I put out a compilation of the first 2 years of this Crooks and Nanny strip I was mentioning. So I guess technically, but that was printing stuff that had already been published online.
Right.
This is, yes, my first all me from scratch, brand new project.
Do you have any, are there any challenges or anything like that you might be anticipating? Or you mentioned you're trying to get most of it done beforehand.
Yes. It's about, it's 5 chapters, distinct chapters, and each chapter is around 26 pages. So it's a fairly long book. And I'm trying to, right now I'm in the middle of chapter 3. I want to have 3 chapters done, colored, lettered, inked, colored, lettered. Let's go in order. Sounds like I work in the industry, doesn't it? And so that I can say with some definitiveness, once hopefully makes its goal, I can say it'll be out in about 3 months,
right?
Or figure out that way, because I know we took a little longer than we wanted to on Megalopolis, the first volume, and I just know there's a lot of people who have backed things and they wait and are still waiting.
Yeah,
to have something get into their hands, and I don't want to be that person.
Right. No one ever does. I don't think anyone desires that, but then sometimes they get there and they kind of throw up their hands and go, whoops. Yep.
I think right now my longest thing on Kickstarter, I think I've been waiting 4 years for something, I believe.
Oh, that's not too bad. I've heard people waiting longer than that.
Yeah, it's true. Not to, I don't want to drop names, but anyways. So
what's it rhyme with?
Well, maybe we'll talk about that when we're done recording. But you mentioned, so you are writing, you are drawing, inking, lettering. I think I got that in the right order.
I'm not lettering it.
Not lettering.
I'm having it lettered.
Okay. I hear lettering is Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I hear lettering is kind of like an art form in and of itself. Like people don't even realize how difficult it can be sometimes.
Well, a lot of times it's especially with balloon placement.
Yep.
Understanding where to place the balloons, even just for flow of a page, avoid certain things that you're covering up. But especially for this book, with demons, there are several characters who are going to be main characters. So it's coming up with distinct typefaces for them that are also legible.
That's the important part.
Yep.
Well, you'll get a zombie typeface. It's all scratchy, and you'll have trouble reading it. I don't mind doing something that's slightly illegible for a character who's just saying 5 lines and never seen again. But for regular characters, I'm working with the letter. We have a group of angels that I'm having a specific typeface and a specific look to their word balloon. The narration of the main character has a specific typeface, etc., like that. So each character, and I'm trying to have the type and the balloon say something about their personality. And that's something you can do in, comics, play with that.
I'm not sure if that's it's a fairly recent tradition, I'll guess, but I'm not sure if I've seen it a lot within the past few years, because that's something that happens with Etrigan, and that's a Ghostwriter thing where you definitely notice, when they're talking or when they're making noise because of how their bubble's shaped and it's full of flames and everything.
Yeah.
Right. Well, from off panel. That's when you have a balloon coming from off panel. In a movie, the person's not on screen and says something, you recognize the voice.
Yeah.
Especially with odd characters, if they're saying something from off while the other characters main on the panel, you can tell who is speaking.
I just realized when they would actually handwrite the words back in the day, whoever got stuck doing Zatanna must have had to practice that a bit. Writing their letters backwards.
Oh man, it takes me like 3 minutes to read one of those word bubbles alone. I struggle. Who knew reading stuff backwards would be so difficult? But so where do we even go from here? I'm kind of blown away. Like I think it goes to show how much work you're really putting into this. Pretty much doing almost all of it on your own. Aside from the lettering.
I'm really anal and possessive.
That's fair.
And especially with something like this that I'm just doing from scratch, I actually tried out a few colorists, and I was just like, no. All right, screw it. I'll do it myself.
I guess if you need it done the way you want it, that's the easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe not the easiest, but
maybe I'm just OCD to the max. I don't know.
What we started off with was meeting you at conventions.
Yep.
Which next week will give any listeners a chance to catch you at a convention at C2E2, and that's March 22 through 24. And the sbest way to find your table is to look up at your wall of prints.
Yep.
Of all your splatter paintings.
I'm easily seen. But I can actually tell you my table number.
Ooh.
What do we got?
My table number is C1.
C1 at C2E2.
Yes. Yeah. Never liked the name that much, C2E2, but it's stuck, I guess.
Well, they got to break it down to be easier.
What is it? That's in Chicago, right?
Yeah.
Is it Chicago Comics and Entertainment
Expo?
Who knows? Either way, it's one that a lot of people. I hear a lot about C2E2.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those like it's on the list. Maybe someday we can get down there and check it out. Get over there.
It's a good show. It gets a lot of people.
Yep.
Definitely get a lot of people through the door.
Is that also a Reed Pop, I believe?
Yeah, that's Reed. Yeah.
Yep.
One of the things go ahead.
I was going to say, yes, you can see my monolith of prints, although we have height restrictions at Reed shows, so it's not as big as I could be.
That's one of the things.
In San Diego, the display is 13 feet tall and 11 feet across.
That's the final form. That's full power.
It's gigantic.
So you get 2 tables at San Diego?
San Diego, I'm actually an exhibitor. I have a booth.
Oh.
Same place every year, booth 4301, corner booth.
Nice.
Because have you been to San Diego at all?
We have not.
The Artist Alley is sort of small and off to the side.
Really?
And it doesn't cost much or almost anything for the artist, which is great, but tables, it's very small. You get half a table. The tables are actually narrower than the usual tables, so it's a little cramped for me. For most people with just a portfolio, it's different, but I have a lot of prints and stuff.
If someone's going to sit down and do like 3 watercolor commissions a day, then it's fine. But
oh yeah.
yeah, okay.
But there's a lot of artists that are exhibitors at San Diego now. The whole Hall F down at the end, they even have blocked off on maps saying artists and fantasy artists, and there's companies that have whole islands and they rent out space to artists to be on the islands there.
Someday,
which I know isn't very interesting to hear about. I've just brought the show to a complete crashing halt.
So legit though, we usually find this stuff interesting. We talk to a lot of people that make things or are involved with the production of things. So from a production aspect, like we're interested in this because a couple of times here and there, we've gotten a table and all we do is do like, hey, listen to our podcast and like, thanks for, we have a pin and
you can buy a pin.
Here's our friend Brett. Usually Brett's sharing a table with us.
And then they go, okay, cool. How much is the pin? It's free, right? And I go, $5. And they go, no, thank you.
No, you at least have a roll up, yeah?
We have a sign. Yeah.
We do have a sign.
Yeah. And what was I going with this? So it is interesting seeing like which shows have certain restrictions, and like you can't buy a block of tables and then sublet them.
Right.
Even though when we talked to Jason Schachter.
Yep.
Because who is he? Essential
Sequential. Yeah.
And so like it's his artists that come in to take up his booth space. So he's not like subletting them. That's his business, and that's where he's employing all these other guys to do art for the day.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
That's a different thing with sort of these. I don't know what to call them. Artist co-op groups, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Yeah, that's separate. They're negotiating with the shows to get a whole rack of tables, and they have whoever's the bigger draw, and then the other clients that get in with them. So I've seen them. I think I've seen them be 5 tables. I've seen them be 20 tables.
Yep.
They're pretty big.
We touched on it a little bit at the beginning, kind of like at least my introduction, to you and your work, Boston, a couple years ago, because the wall of the splatter prints, whatever you want to, the prints that you sell is very eye catching. Because not only like it's one of those, there's something there for everyone, kind of like whatever character you might be into, there's a good chance you're going to find it. They're also unique in the fact that it's not just like, oh, here's a print of Thanos. It's Thanos' face. Enjoy that face and put it on. Like it's different. Like you're gonna get some color. You're gonna get some variation. They're really neat and they're eye catching. Which initially I was like, what is this? And then like it's also it helps that. I mean, obviously, people have seen so far that you're a cool guy, very down to earth, like very easy to talk to. I'm extremely shy and like I rely on Alex to kind of carry conversations when we're in person.
Rely on the kindness of strangers.
Yeah. I rely on Alex to kind of just carry me, and I can chime in every now and then. But whereas like when I'm alone walking a con, like, oh God, I made eye contact with someone. Please don't look at me.
I have to talk now. Oh boy.
But that was gone. Like, hanging out with you and Alex at your table. It was like, oh, like, it's like, we're all just chatting and we're talking about art and we're talking about like, thumbing through, and I remember asking questions about the art, and I remember the page, I ended up picking up a page from you, which was, by the way, one of the most reasonably priced original art pages I've ever seen.
Oh, that's usually my problem.
Yeah.
When I start flipping through and I see like, oh, I want this for Landry's page. I also want that. Can't get them all. and I can't choose between just one.
I have a range of prices on my pages. I'll have some that are overpriced or expensive, and then some that are just people can afford. I like people to be able to get some.
Yeah, right. Like I own 4 pages of original art. 2 of them are from the same. Yeah, a whopping 4. And one
Slow
of them,
down.
and that's going to conventions now for 9 years. I've managed to collect 4.
So what is that? What is that? 0.36 art purchases per year?
Well, like I'm just talking about original pages. I have sketches and stuff like that.
Sketches, yeah.
I have my not to brag. I have my fair share of sketches. But in terms of straight up original art, it's just not something typically. Getting married, buying a house, unfortunately it's kind of been on the back burner for me. But I did pick up a page from you back in 2012. It was from Secret 6, and I remember I bought it just because it had the one of the Black Lantern rings on it. I really like Blackest Night. It's kind of one of the storylines that got me into comics a lot. Like right when I first got into it, Blackest Night was like just happening. So I was like, yo, there's a black ring on this. I don't care. I don't know who the character is on it. I want it. It's a really good price. Like it was the easiest money thrown down. I remember that Boston Comic Con too. I spent a shocking amount of money. But it wasn't even
before you got married, right?
This was before I got married, before I owned a house.
The purse strings were open.
Yep. I could throw down money at that year. I threw money at Joe Quinones and Ivan Rice and you, Jim, and like it was like a kind of like a last hurrah there for a little bit. Anyways, but it just made it that much better. Like my experience, like I could go home and I could tell my friends about it, and I could like the page has been up on my wall ever since we got it. Right now it's in my office above my computer, and like when people come over, I can say, yeah, like this is my really neat art page, and here's the story about me talking with the guy who made it, and it was really neat. And like me and Alex, we chatted with him for like 40 minutes. And I think that speaks a lot to, kind of who you are and the work that you put out. Like, I think, because you don't necessarily have to do that. We have talked with creators before who they're just kind of like, yeah, man, take a look through the book, thanks. And they just go back to doing whatever they're doing. Mm-hmm. And like, they'll ask them a question.
It goes along with always having wanted to work in comics. I love it. I love talking it. People want to stand and talk. There are some people that get a little crazy,
Yeah.
On page 36 of issue 14 of Secret 6, on the 7th panel, what was Ragdoll thinking there?
Ragdoll was thinking I need to make money by drawing this page.
Yeah, basically. Because he had a look on that mask.
Yeah, the expression of the mask
shows no
really.
Emotion.
But the face on the mask is so expressive too.
Yes, of course.
But like Jared's saying, like this has happened a bunch of times where we just start bothering you, and I've never had the sense where I'm getting shooed away.
Jim hates me.
Yeah. I'm a good actor. No, it's only time I have problems is if I'm like on Sunday when the sketch list is behind,
mm-hmm.
right?
And I've got to get them done.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'll say to the person, I'm not going to look up while you're talking. I do hear you, but I have to draw, and I'll have to talk, never looking at the person for the whole time.
Which is,
I got to get that sketch done.
Which is still fair. I mean, I've seen, and this isn't even a knock. It's just, I get it. The work needs to get done. I've seen people, you go to visit their table on like Sunday, and there's a sign there like, I'll be here at like 3:00 if you want to pick up your sketch, but I'm spending the rest of the day drawing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm catching up on sketches. Sorry, I'm not going to be here, but you can pick your stuff up later.
Well, I kind of know also how many I can get done in a weekend.
True.
So I cut my list off. Those are people who didn't cut their list off.
Yeah. We've all been there. Alex and I have both. I don't want to say been victims, but we've experienced the. Oh God, I was supposed to get a sketch, and the show is over, and I don't have a sketch.
Yeah.
But it happens. That's what happens.
With experience, you learn like which artist will be on time, and then we get to go. Is Ransom getting at his table yet? No. Who knows where he is right
now? For real though.
Well, I've been posting a couple of pre-commissions on my Instagram and on my Facebook, and I also put the note in there if anybody wants to get on the list. I like to have people who will email me ahead of time get on the list, and that way I can even figure out how things are going to go, and I can even do a little pre-drawing before I get there, But I let people get on the list in advance if they email me.
Do they ever say anything like if they ask you not to post your prelims or your pencils because they want to be surprised by it, or do you know if they're watching your social media for it?
I've never had anybody who I get that where they wanted to be surprised by it.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the ones I just posted, I posted it before sending him a JPEG of it to see. This was a full commission. I posted 2 full commissions on Instagram, one of Ghostwriter and one of Captain America. And I think the Captain America, I hadn't sent him the JPEG yet to check out before I posted it on Instagram. But he just said, oh, it looks really cool. The only time I've really had that is someone who got a Christmas gift for someone.
Right.
They wanted, believe it or not, Conan versus Spider-Man.
I saw that one.
Interesting combination.
Was that you? Was that you, Alex?
It wasn't. I'm a big Conan fan. That's a good swing, by the way. It looks good.
And they said don't post it till after Christmas. Because the person they wanted to be a surprise for the person they were getting it for. So
that's fair.
I just held off posting that.
In terms of sketching, this is another one of my boring questions, but I feel like it's the inner nerd in me cannot resist.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. Is there a character? It's kind of like a 2-parter. Someone comes up, yo.
Oh, man, you're pushing it.
I know. I'm such a bastard.
Wow. You preface it with it's going to be a boring question, and it's going to be 2 parts of boring.
Two-parter
You're
boring
doubling
question.
the boring. Okay.
We have the quality content here. It's what we're known for to all of our 4 listeners.
Let me strap my weight belt on for this one. All right, go ahead.
Someone comes up to you, they say, "Yo, Jim, I want a sketch." What character do they say that makes you go, ugh? And what character do they say that makes you go, oh, hell yeah, let me draw that?
Well, Galactus is always the bane of existence because you say, or you have your little sign, you say how much a full figure is.
Uh-huh.
Then they say, okay, Galactus. Oh, Christ. Because he takes twice as long to draw than anybody else.
Uh-huh.
Is that because of like the helmet or like the detail on it? Because Alex and I, having no artistic abilities whatsoever, what makes it difficult? What makes it suck?
And like pick a version too.
There's a lot of shit to them. There's those ear things and the helmet and the tchotchkes on the helmet and the little visor above the eyes and then across the nose and the piping across here and the round thing on the chin and down there. Then the round thing on the chest and all the lines on the chest and blah, blah, blah. It just...
I'm exhausted just hearing that.
It's like, or somebody, it's a single figure. Okay, War Machine. Oh, man. Because he's got the gun mounts and all this. And, I still do it. I have fun with it. But it's just that moment where you go, oh, Jesus. In terms of characters to draw that I really love to draw, I love drawing the Juggernaut.
Yep.
Hulk is always fun because he's my favorite character. And then sometimes you just get those characters that you've never had a feeling for, but it's the same thing as doing a book. It's your job.
Right. Yep, I hear that.
Try and have them all look as good as possible. And then there's characters I was never into that I start drawing. I'm like, oh, this is a cool character. I didn't think it'd be somebody that'd be fun to draw. The original, is it the original? The black and white costume Spider-Woman, who was in Forceworks when I did Forceworks. Is this you know who I'm talking about?
Oh,
She
yeah.
had the black and white costume with the white spider and the white boots.
Yep, and she was
and gloves.
like a light brown, like not quite blonde hair.
Yeah,
Yep.
big hair. I don't even remember who it was. She had no interest in the character, and then enjoyed drawing her. She was actually a lot of fun to draw. So,
what we hear sometimes that we're not really sure exactly what it means, and so we end up asking the question of like when we pick up a piece from an artist, and like you just said, that was fun to draw. This was, this character was fun. Like, what is it about them that makes them a fun drawing, or like the character, like what stands out?
Well, if it's one of your favorite characters, obviously, like I said, Juggernaut or the Hulk. Or if somebody came up to ask me to draw the Metal Men, which never happens because nobody likes the Metal Men, but the Metal Men are my favorite characters. It's just, if you get a character you can play with. A lot of times villains are the most fun because you can really go into left field with them. Villains are always more energetic, nastier. That'll make it fun to draw too.
So I think
there's no one thing that it's like, wow, that was fun. It's just sometimes you're just drawing, you're like, oh, this one was really fun for strange reasons. I do have fun drawing Venom because you can really just go crazy on him. The characters that are somewhat amorphous in terms of how everybody draws them, you can just put your crazy stamp on it.
I think we heard it here first. We need let's find the writer. Let's get Jim Calafiore on a Metal Men book. Let's make it happen. I feel like the Metal Men, like I remember they showed up in Justice League when Jeff Johns was writing it for a little bit, for a couple issues, and I was like, yo, these Metal Men are dope. Who are these people?
Yeah.
And then they were gone again, and I feel like it needs to happen. Although this kind of segues into one of my last questions that I had with kind of just a general thing, DC. I think they recently announced they're kind of cutting back on books. I think they're going to be releasing less books as it comes out. How do you feel about the current state of comics these days?
The industry in general?
Yeah.
Is that what you're at? I don't know. Honestly,
same.
We know the sales are problems. I don't know if it's been shrinking even more. I really don't track it. You get the relaunching of the universes to try and bump sales.
Every other year.
Yeah, and there's good stuff and bad stuff. I mean, the stories that come out are good stuff and bad stuff, but just rebooting constantly to bump the sales, restarting with number ones to boost the sales. I wish it was stronger, you know, but the amount of other, and this is not a revelation of any kind, it's been this way for years, the amount of other things to take people away from comics. When I was a kid in the 70s, there wasn't a lot. You know, if we had video games, we had a single pixel going across the screen back and forth between two paddles, you know. And we thought that was fucking amazing. We were out of our minds when they came out with Space Invaders. Look, they move. Their antennas go up and down. Wow, they move a pixel up and down.
It's on the TV.
Yeah. Special effects in movies weren't as much as we like to watch something like Jason and the Argonauts with Ray Harryhausen stop motion animation. We still knew it was little models he was moving. You could see it plainly.
Yeah.
So the distraction from this medium that could transport us wasn't that strong. Now there's just so much to take you away from it. And you know, the prices have, you know, it's also a price thing. The better printing and everything over the years, how much they've cost. When I was a kid, I'd buy, you know, 4 books for $1.
Now you get $4 for a book.
Yeah, I know.
If you're lucky.
I know, it's reversed now. And but they look beautiful, you know. There's really good stuff out there. There's bad stuff out there. It's always the same. It's just in terms of the readership, you know.
Right.
I don't want it to go away. This is all I want to do. I don't want to do advertising. I don't want to do anything else as an artist. I've been, even through the downtime when the speculators left the market and a lot of artists moved into other things, animation and stuff, I hung on with my fingernails because this is what I like to do. This is what I wanted to do my whole life.
If I can switch back for a second.
Sure.
What was your inspiration for doing your splatter paintings? Like to go from illustration to be like, this is the kind of art that I want to make, and here's what I'm going to do with it.
It was just a side thing, really. If you go to my website, jimcalafiore.com, I've said it again. I'm going to plug that sucker to death.
Do it.
There's a button that says paintings. And on there's actually, I think at the top of the page, there's a picture of a wall in my house. And it explains that I just had a big wall in my house, in my living room, that I wanted to do an art installation on. And so I came up with this idea. And it sort of came out of the comics ever since I've been scanning, you know, since everything went digital for scanning and sending in the pages to the publishers. We don't have to send in the actual pages anymore for them to scan. We scan ourselves and send the files in. It also allows you to play a little bit with the art. And something like my first issue of Secret Six, which I think was issue 14, John Ostrander wrote it. It was a story of Deadshot. I was doing a lot of white splattering for blood and figures, and I would put a silhouette against a silhouette, and then in the computer do a little splatter up the side, and the silhouette would be separated out from the background. And I could leave that on separate layers for the colorist that I could send that in. So that was just something I had done with silhouettes in the computer, and I sort of just had this idea of taking portraits, heavily shadowed portraits of superheroes, and using colored paint, basically in their costume color. So there's no skin color generally. It's except for the Hulk is green, something like that. And if you look at the website, there's these pictures of my wall, and I didn't pick all my favorite characters. I kind of picked out color balance for the whole thing, and it's a grid of 4 paintings. The paintings are 12 by 12. The canvases, and it's a grid of 16 of them, 4 by 4, mounted on the wall, and it's got a nice feel. it feels like an art installation. It doesn't feel like a comic book page.
Mm-hmm.
My wife loved it, and she doesn't like comics, or well, she doesn't read comics. And anybody who's come into the house who doesn't know anything about comics, they really like it. It has a pop art feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I had done it, I said, I wonder if people would buy prints of these. So I started making prints, and then I started getting commissions, and I've done over 140 different characters now.
Wow.
Yeah, because a lot of people got commissions after I had my initial 16 or 20 for sale. Somebody commissioned all the Avengers.
Mm-hmm. All of them.
Nine. Well, they commissioned 9 paintings, or was it? Well, it was 6 to start with for the original Avengers, and then Hawkeye, Scarlet Witch, and the Green, Quicksilver. That's who were the first replacements way back when, in issue whatever of Avengers. And then somebody would commission an X-Men character, and it kept mushrooming like that. And I've done some characters that I have no prints of because nobody wants to buy Blue Devil.
Yeah, maybe someday. Maybe.
Well, the person who got Blue Devil was probably the only person who would have bought a Blue Devil. So the commissioned person got the Blue Devil. It was a lot of fun, but there's certain characters nobody really cares about.
How many tries does this take to get right? Is there ones
Well,
where like, I got this one wrong, got to start over?
Well, it was a strange beginning. The very first one I did was Spider-Man, and it worked perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, this is easy.
Famous last words.
Wasted about 10 canvases after that.
Wow.
Because it turned out that just out of sheer luck, the Spider-Man was sort of idiot-proof. It just worked. There was no way to screw it up in terms of amount of paint. And it turns out there's a fine line of amount of paint that you can actually do this with. So I screwed up a bunch of canvases before I finally got it down. And then there's something like the Superman. I just wasn't happy with how it was coming out, and I ended up doing 5 or 6 Supermans until I found the one I really liked once it was done. But now it's not so bad. I'll screw up. I just did some really large pieces. I'm trying to do some different sizes just to play around with, see how they look, different groupings, different sizes. And I just did about 6 to 10 paintings, and I messed up one of them. So I'm getting better.
We're learning.
Yeah.
Are there points where you're like, maybe I shouldn't do this one because like Silver Surfer is he's going to be white and gray, I guess.
Well, I did do Silver Surfer.
Right.
He was in the original group. Some people thought he was Professor X just because it was a bald head.
Right.
And I actually did do a Professor X so that people would now have a Professor X to actually get. There are certain characters that would be really tough to do. Unless I put him in his green and purple armor, Lex Luthor would be really tough to do. Because basically I would just flip the Professor X and say, hey, this is Lex Luthor. Change the colors to green,
Yeah.
And then characters that are all flesh are tough.
Yeah.
Because I'm using the costume colors. I'm generally not using any flesh color. So somebody like Submariner might be a little tough.
Right.
I actually don't know what he wears nowadays. I know during the 80s there was that black sort of vest outfit, black and blue vest outfit. But mostly I've ever seen him is in his tidy greenies.
Speedo. Yeah.
As we're getting toward the end of our chat here, we'll give you a
say it isn't so.
I know. I have, before we obviously we're gonna give you a moment to plug all the stuff that we mentioned, the website. I have one last question. I feel like it's the most important one from my point of view. Save it for
sarcasm. I can hear the sarcasm in that one.
No, we're saving it for the end because this is what we got to get the people clickbait and all that stuff. Make them listen to the whole thing.
If you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be?
How'd you know? My main question, my main concern from one Giants fan to another.
Okay.
How do you feel about them letting Landon Collins go? Are you as angry as I am? What?
I don't know. Honestly, you're breaking news with me. They let him go?
They didn't franchise him, so he's officially a free agent.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Thanks. Jeez. I'm having a good time. Now I gotta go downstairs and drink a beer and cry.
Ruined his night.
Yep.
I think they should have done something with him, but he may have wanted way too much.
True. Yeah.
His performance was down the last couple seasons. I'm not saying he's not a really good player, but there was a certain point that they probably said he wants too much, and they need to do a lot of stuff. Yeah,
they need a lot of things.
We need defense, we need offense. Offensive line, defensive line, and offensive line. We need help there. Honestly, it's just, you want to get really into the minutia. The biggest thing I wanted them to do, and I assume they talked to him about it and he refused, was to rework Eli Manning's deal to help with the salary cap this year, because he's a big hit on the salary cap this year, and obviously nothing happened, so
they're paying him
resisted
paying him like $23 million or something like that.
Yeah, and it's just crazy, but yeah, we could talk about the Giants for hours. How much time you got?
Yeah, especially with how they've been playing recently. There's just a lot to vent, but. Yeah, that was my. I didn't mean to bring it down. Didn't mean to. I figured you heard the news.
First,
I know. We should have screened our questions beforehand, man. But
do you depress all your guests this way?
Sometimes.
Maybe we do.
Honestly.
Excuse me. All right, now that we've totally killed the mood, we did. You mentioned, let's keep an eye out on Kickstarter in the near future.
Yes, you can check my website or my Facebook or my Instagram. As I'm getting closer, I will start posting teaser stuff on Instagram and Facebook, the title, and different things, and more artwork and more specific stuff. And then when it's up, it definitely will be announced. And then I'll be asking people like you to help promote it.
Exactly. You can check out that Instagram. That's Jim_Calafiore. That's CALAFIORE.
The underscore is important. There's an erroneous Jim Calafiore account out there.
Unbelievable.
With no underscore. It's actually mine by accident. I'll give you a quick story on that. I just started Instagram. I'm not a real tech guy, so I just started Instagram near Baltimore last year. Jim_Calafiore. So I go to sign on my iPad, and it just automatically signs me on. And I'm like, okay, must have read somehow from my phone, because I had logged in on my phone. It must have, somehow got the password because they're all talking to each other. No, Facebook decided to launch a separate Instagram account all on its own.
Oh, perfect.
And 3 hours later, somebody says, hey, you got 140-some followers. He goes, wait, this isn't your account. I'm like, oh, what the hell happened? So I've got it deleted, but I've been sort of policing it, telling people, no, this is the wrong account. But it was just Facebook just said, okay, we're starting a new Instagram account for you.
Good old technology. But yes,
the robots are taking over.
Make sure...
the underscore is important.
Yes, the underscore in between Jim and Calafiore. Pop that in there. Go give it a follow. You'll see some beautiful art, along with looks like some beer, some Giant stuff. I'm down with it's good stuff. Also,
we could talk about beer for hours too, if you want.
Yeah, we're kind of deaf ears. Neither of us drink. Yeah. But
man.
I know.
All right.
Well, I feel like the end of this interview, we've done nothing but disappoint our guest. And
at some point, maybe we'll have an all beer episode. We'll step out. We'll have Jim on with Dave and Brett.
Yep.
Because they're our beer buddies.
They're beer buds.
They're the guy. They know everything.
And they'll just talk about beer. In the meantime, check out the website, jimcalafiore.com. Instagram, keep your eyes peeled for the Kickstarter. And also take a look. See, there's you can go check out the old books, some Red Lanterns, some Leaving Megalopolis, some Surviving Megalopolis. It's all great stuff.
They're even collecting the old Aquamans now.
And the old Aquamans.
Peter David's Aquaman, finally.
Keep track of his convention appearances. That's where we became such great annoyances to him.
It's true.
Bothering him so much in the past.
That's also on my website.
And
yes,
the list. That's
where I bothered Jim asking so many questions about Exiles. And I'd be like, so what was it like drawing Morph so much? And as soon as the new 52 kicked off, we talked about the new Suicide Squad. And I go, Floyd doesn't have a mustache? And King Shark's a different shark now?
He's a hammerhead.
It's what happens. And you were like, he's a hammerhead now? I'm like, I don't know.
Oh yeah, I'm not very diplomatic about my opinions when people talk to me at shows.
It's awesome.
And yeah, when you see him at a show, buy some prints, buy some original art, get a sketch, commission a painting, do all those things. It'll be a good time.
Yeah. Yep. Have a nice
I endorse
chat.
that strategy.
Jim, thank you so much for coming on. This was a lot of fun. In my eyes, it lived up to the hype. I'm excited for people to listen. This was great. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. That is going to do it. If you're at C2E2 next week, go to the table and say hi, and throw some money. Not in his face, but like at his bot. Anyways, that is going to do it for this week. Until next time, I have been JR.
I'm Alex.
And I was Jim.
And this has been episode 365 of Opinions May Vary.